Everyone. Welcome to the first annual Trauma Recovery Coaching Summit, sponsored by the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching. I'm Bobby Parrish, the Executive Director of the Association.
And hi, I'm Sarah Parrish, the Deputy Director.
We're so glad that you're here to join us for these 5 days of interviews with our coaches. We're going to be talking about trauma, trauma recovery, and trauma recovery coaching. We do want to ask you to practice good self-care through the interviews because some of them could be triggering.
Thank you, Bobby. So today we have the absolute honour in welcoming Bola. And today Bola is going to come to us today and talk about living daily in worthiness and authenticity. Hi, Bola. How are you doing?
Oh, hi, Sarah. I am very well. Hi, Bobby.
Hi,
It's
Bola.
nice to see you. Nice to see you. No, it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's wonderful for you to be here. So, Bola, can you just help us and help our viewers to explain to us, how do you define worthiness?
Well, worthiness, thank you, Sarah. I define worthiness as really, it's the degree to which we feel good enough, the degree to which we can say, I am enough, and really believe that and really live in that space. Because what we find is that we are quite dynamic, multidimensional beings, and we have so many selves. We have our past selves, we have our present selves, we have the, aspirational future self. And really, how do we reconcile all of that and really accept it all and live in it and enjoy it and be happy in it? And I believe it was Rumi, the poet, who said something along the lines of, when we begin to live from our souls, we actually begin to feel the river flowing within us, moving within us, and that is joy. So how do we begin to really live from our souls, really begin to know how good enough we are? Because we are good enough. That is the truth. That is the truth. We are good enough. We are enough. But we have been conditioned with so many untruths, so many lies. And many of us have been through so much trauma that our brains have been altered. And we do not perceive things the way they should be perceived or the way they really are. We actually are not processing information the way we are meant to process it. So we sometimes struggle to feel good enough. We sometimes struggle to really believe the truth. And when we begin to actually see things that the way they are, we can begin to actually feel good enough. And some of the things that impact how we see things could be things like the way we compare ourselves to others. And sometimes this is a natural, very natural human behavior. We see somebody else and we feel that we know them, we feel we know enough about them, and we begin to compare ourselves with them. But the truth is, the only person we can compare ourselves with is our past self. We do not know anybody else. And even our past selves, we're a bit tricky, that one, So really, comparison is not something we should be engaging in, but we sometimes do. And it impacts on even how we perceive ourselves. We get temporary memory loss, and we don't even remember what successes we have had or what we have been through. And, we don't see the good in ourselves. We lose temporarily a memory about ourselves when we compare. So as we begin to really raise our awareness, really begin to understand ourselves a bit more, we do avoid comparisons. And another thing that we do that really impacts on us feeling good enough is criticism. We sometimes criticize others, or we get criticized. And in this world of perfectionism, where everybody wants to be doing things in a particular way, I remember sitting in a restaurant one day, and this lady walked past and she was looking for the toilet, and she was saying, "Where's the toilet?" And she had this little boy with her, and I saw the boy and I said to her, "The men's toilet is that way." And she goes, I'm not looking for the men's toilet. And she said, oh, I'm looking for the ladies' toilet. And I said, oh, okay, I'm only trying to help. And in her mind, she only could go to the ladies' toilet. And that was the correct thing to do. And my suggestion on male toilet was just not on, you know. And these are the things that sometimes happens to us. And we need to hold our intentions. Our intention is to help, is to love. And when we get someone's perception coming back at us, we really can begin to hold that place and hold our validation of ourselves. And we also begin to surround ourselves with people who care about us, people who want to help us. I do not know what I would have done without a coach, because having a coach was something that enabled me to begin to build that unconditional love for myself. And that's the third thing that impacts on our feeling good enough. It's having unconditional self-acceptance and our self-care. So when we begin to build that within us, we begin to know that no matter what, we deserve love. We are worthy of love. We begin to take care of ourselves. We begin to get motivated. Unconditional self-love is actually very, very key, very, very fundamental, because that is what gives us the motivation to protect ourselves, to protect this loving person that we are. And I found myself slowly beginning to develop that. And that's something that I see in my clients as well. They begin to develop unconditional love within themselves. They begin to feel motivated to care for themselves a bit more. And caring for your mind, your body, your spirit, what you eat, what you drink, your teeth, you know, what you wear, you know, your home, the work you do. You begin to look out for the best of yourself. So that roughly is a definition of of worthiness. And we really can begin to build it. It's in degrees, building that sense of feeling good enough.
Yes, so much of what you've said I can identify with as a survivor myself, but there are things that I hear my clients talk about with me all the time. So you've defined worthiness. Tell us now, what's authenticity?
Yes, now authenticity is linked to worthiness, because you really can't become authentic until you have developed that worthiness within you. And worthiness I defined as really being able to know the degree of how good enough you are. Now, being authenticity itself is a process. It's actually a process. It's a process of staying connected to who you are and being the author of your life. So you're staying connected to this person that you're discovering. You're staying connected to the things that you love to do, to the things that you say, to the things that you see, the things that your mindset, your skills. And we start off not knowing how to do this. It's a lifelong process. It's not you get to one place and you're suddenly authentic. And we start off not actually knowing anything about being authentic. We start off being, as children, we are trying to please everybody around us. We're trying to please our parents, our peers, in school, at work. We have absolutely no idea who we are. We are the people that we need to be. We are the people that will make my mom love me. We are the people that will make my teacher give me an A. So we do not really, at the beginning, know how to be authentic. We have to learn it. And sometimes we learn it by osmosis, just being, watching role models around us. And we begin to develop a sense of what skills we have, what we like, what we like to think, what we like to drink, what we like to eat, our characteristics. We begin to develop these characteristics and begin to know and begin to feel authentic about who we are. And sometimes those skills and values and mindsets get us to a particular level, but they will not get us where we need to go. And that's when we need to think about this level where I'm at. what limitations do I have? Because the self that we have, this dynamic, multidimensional self, has so many parts. There's the light part, there's the dark part, there's the envious part of me. There's the, I could be kind one moment and mean the next. I could be nice and awkward. I could be loving and not so loving. I could be joyful and fearful. We have so many parts to us. And it's about how do we learn about all these parts and accept them, feeling good enough at the level that we are at. But there are some things at the level we are at that we need to release. And there are limitations. The limitations that have been formed in us from the trauma that we've had. And when we begin to release those limitations, we then begin to get ready for the next levels. And when we get to that next level, there are more limitations that will raise their heads, and we begin to release them as we go along. And authenticity, you know, the Greek word for authenticity comes from a Greek word, which is authentios. And it means, you know, doing something with your hand, what you do with your hand, being the author of your life. You are creating your life with your hands. And that is who we are. We are meant, this is what we are meant to do. We are meant to create our lives. And I'm going to quote Rumi again. I love Rumi, as you can tell. Rumi says that your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So these are the barriers that we need to release. And when we get to one level, we will find barriers that we need to release. And this is why a lot of my programs are about manifesting your next levels. We have attained certain levels in our lives, and we need to release the barriers and limitations that will take us to the next level. So that's really about authenticity. It's, you know, it's really the staying connected. And in my programs, I use a lot of tools and transformational strategies that help my clients to release the barriers and the limitations of the level they're at, so they can go to the next level. And it's a lifelong process. It's about not getting stagnant, not being rigid, accepting yourself for who you are, all that you are, your wonderful and your not so wonderful sides, and learning what works for you, and being able to really enjoy your life, even as you are learning. Because learning is hard. Learning is hard work. When we are used to being who we are, learning is one of the hardest things to do. It takes great courage to leave our comfort zones. They're comfortable, but they're not so comfortable. You know, it's that kind of in between. And we learn to do things at each level that we are. We learn to do different things, and we have to be willing. We have to have a learning mindset, not a fixed mindset. We have to have a learning mindset that we're learning all the time, and we're creating our own lives. And as we stay in this flexible place, we begin to flow more. We begin to flow more with whatever life brings to us. And really, this is what I'm doing now. This is what I love to do. I love showing people how to flow, how to accept themselves for who they are. The trauma that we have had, the lives that we have led have taken us to this point. And all is how it should be. You know, this is what you have, the present time. What can you do in this present time to live your life in an enjoyable way and get the very best out of it? So this for me is living an authentic life, letting go of the resistance, learning what we need to learn, the tools that we need to connect, to stay connected to who we are and be the author of our lives.
Wow, I absolutely love that, Bola. Thank you for sharing that. It's just absolutely huge. And, you know, one of the things, you know, if you can help us with our viewers is, you know, of how you've learned and how have you discovered your own worthiness and authenticity.
Yes. Oh, wow. Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a long story. I'll cut it very short. I was born. I was born in Nigeria, in Lagos, Nigeria, West Africa, about 50 years ago. And I came to London, to UK about 30 years ago. And I'm now very blessed. I'm really blessed. I'm blessed with two beautiful young men. My 23-year-old son has got autism. He was born with autism, and he has very complex health needs. And he's living a very independent life. He has he's in full-time college, and has his own home with carers. And he's very well cared for, and he's very happy. Is a master. Is a master of his life, and I have that oversight and overview of his care. And my second son, my other son, is 21, and is finishing his third year in his degree at university, and is an all-rounder. He's into sports, rugby, kayaking, and traveling all over the place. And I only tell him to tell me where he is at any point in time. Is doing so well, and I'm so proud of both of them. And this is my family, and this is the life that I live, and I enjoy it. I created this life out of intention and out of purpose. And I love my coaching business. I love my energy healing business. I totally love my charity work. I work with persons with disabilities and persons with special educational needs, and I enjoy it. And this is the life that I wanted from the get-go. But it wasn't always like this. As a child, I went through a lot of abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, and, as early as the age of 5, 6. And by the age of 10, I had quite severe anxiety and depression. And I also lost my father at that age, and he was my rock, even though we had a very complex relationship. That grief that I went through did not leave me till some years ago. And because I had these difficulties up until the age of 10, I began to see myself struggling with life. I had a very dissociated personality, and I was struggling to study. And I went from being an A student to doing my GCSEs at age 15, failing them, and having to retake them 3 times, 3 years in a row, before I actually passed and went to university. So the impact of the trauma was something that I struggled with for many years. And this was not something that I could deal with on my own. I had no understanding of trauma or of how to get help. There was no one I could turn to. So those were very difficult years. And by the time I turned 18, I remember 1986, 87, I saw a book at home. We had a library at home. My mother was a librarian, a very successful one, a diplomat, in fact, an international librarian. And I found this book at home called Who Am I? Titled Who Am I? And I began to read this book, and I got very curious about who am I? What do I like to do? What is success? What is happiness? What makes me happy? What makes other people happy? Why am I so sad? Why do I have so much tensions? I began to ask questions about myself. And then, what do I want out of life? And I discovered within 3 weeks that what I wanted was to get out of here. What I wanted was to leave home, but I didn't talk to anybody about it. But within a year, I was in London, in the UK, with my husband, and we settled. But because I still had these difficulties, because even though I was reading a lot and I was really getting to develop myself, it was all intellectual. I wasn't going deep. I wasn't digging deep. And he was also into personal development, but he wasn't doing it with me. We were not growing together. So we grew apart. So that by the time the kids came, 12 years later when the kids came, and we split up. And so there I was with my two sons, age 3 and 2, on my own. Quite a difficult time, because I had a bit of a nervous breakdown, to put it lightly. I was broke, even though I had a good job. I was earning 20,000 a year. But I definitely struggled. I remember one day going to Liverpool. I was going to Liverpool, and I got to the station and I somehow asked for tickets to Blackpool. And I found myself in Blackpool, and I was meant to be giving a seminar that morning in Liverpool. So my work began to suffer. I began to lose my thoughts, began to lose my train of thought. So I had to pause. I was forced to pause. And sometimes it's nice to pause even before we are forced to. But I got to a place where I just had to stop. I knew I had to quit work. And even though I had a really wonderful boss, she was so good, she was so understanding, but I knew that I couldn't continue. So I stopped and I began to do therapy. I began to do counseling. I began to read a lot more. I began to take medication, because I had not taken medication for years. And by this time, I was a size 22. I was from a size 12 to a size 22. I was way beyond. Food was my comfort. So, and I remember going to lots of seminars and retreats. Tony Robbins was a favorite. And I remember going to 4 years in a row, going to Unlimited Power Within. I went to seminars with Inyala Basanti, Marion Williamson, Juanita Vinum, T.D. Jakes, a long list of seminars. And again, still intellectualizing. I had a faith in God. I had a faith in my religion, but I couldn't somehow find a way to translate that into making my life what I wanted it to be, into being happy, into enjoying life, into understanding myself deep down. There was some work being done, but it was taking me so long just to get to where I wanted to be. And then I discovered Reiki. And I went for some Reiki training with Reiki Academy London. And my Reiki master, Torsten Alexander Lange, is somebody who is so passionate about Reiki, so passionate about energy healing. And he made me understand that we are energy. Everything about us is energy. We have 3 trillion cells within us, just in us. We are made up of 3 trillion cells. And these cells are vibrating, high vibration or low vibration. Everything within us, our emotions have a vibration, sadness has a vibration, is lower than happiness, than joy, which has a higher vibration. Our thoughts have a vibration. Every single thought has a high or low vibration. And it's about how we can maintain this vibration within us, how we can maintain the higher vibrations and release the lower vibrations. And we feel them around us, within us. We know when we're in the presence of low vibration, and we know when we're in the presence of high vibration. And I began to raise my awareness, because what Reiki did for me was to begin the healing, to begin the unconditional love within me. I began to build my sense of worthiness, my sense of being good enough. And that made me want to protect myself more. It made me want to avoid low-level energy. Because really, if you don't have unconditional love for yourself, you have no reason to want to get away from low vibration energy or from any kind of discomfort. You really want to begin to develop that. So that's what I had to start doing. But it happened by accident. I just was getting healing through Reiki, and I began to love myself more. I began to want to know more about myself. I began to have courage to use the tools and the transformational strategies that were around me to dig deeper. I got the courage to get a coach, and I didn't feel that I was not good enough because sometimes when we don't feel good enough, getting a coach is evidence that we're really not good enough. If I'm needing to get a coach, then that is evidence that I'm not good enough. And all of that kind of adds itself up. You know, you're in one place and you begin to pile up that, self-contempt, that sense of you're not where you should be. And I began to accept myself more. But it was because I was going through those tools and transformations, I began to release the limitations and the barriers that I had built up against myself, the guards, the armor, the bridges. And I began to see my relationships, my relationships and interactions began to change. I became strong enough. I became confident enough to leave my 9 to 5 and start my own business. I became confident enough to actually decide my son doesn't need to be at home with me, and I'm not really capable to look after him at this time. He needs to have professionals looking after him. So I became bold and confident enough to actually care for those that I was caring for in a better way, in a more authentic way. I became more true to myself. And really, that has been my journey. And I am now in a place where I'm loving sharing what I have learned. All the tools and tips and strategies I use in my programs are things that I have used by myself. They're the things that I have used to build my life. And I continue to use them. These are daily tools that we use. And I am still using what I'm teaching. So that's my, in a very short, I am not sure how long that was, but yeah, but really that's my story.
Yeah, you talked a bit about, at the end, about what tools you have learned that you now use in your coaching practice, leading your clients to feel the worthiness and the authenticity. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you do that within your coaching work with clients?
Yes. I combine my coaching with Reiki because for me, Reiki is key. Reiki is the healing tool that I offer, and I offer this within my coaching sessions. So it's something that I do for every single session that I have with my clients. At the end of the session, I always do Reiki. But my coaching programs, I have 8-week programs that I run, and they're one-to-one as well as group coaching programs. And they're live video, they're all online. And what I do is I really help my clients understand who they are using inner child inquiry, reframing their mindsets, discovering what the beliefs that they are holding are, discovering what is limiting and what is a strength, and helping them to release it through different tools, guided meditations, through EFT. I also use reframing and inner inquiry, where they go into meditation and I really ask their inner child, what is going on for you? What is your biggest trauma? And we go through those times and we relieve them, and we let those emotions go. Those emotions that no longer serve us. And we begin to feel freer. And I also have a one-to-one leadership, a 4-month bespoke leadership program, which I also run online. It's also live videos. All my programs are live video sessions. And I also have subliminal programming audio sessions on my website. I have a new weekly podcast, which I just started, and that's about living in worthiness and authenticity on a daily basis. And I empower listeners to really just, with tools and strategies to help them release on a daily basis. And really, these are the sets of the tools. I have several tools that I use, but that's just a summary of what I do. And also neuro-linguistic programming is part of what I do. Breathing, a lot of on the spot tools. So you're feeling a trigger coming up. What do? You can breathe it. You can actually breathe through the triggers. You have a thought coming in your mind. What do? You can actually reframe that thought. You can have a more empowering, more supportive affirmation, more supportive mindset and belief. And what tends to happen over 8 weeks, over the 4 months with my leadership clients, is that you begin to feel much more comfortable with validating yourself, beginning to feel like you can deal with your inner critic, you can deal with your triggers, you can deal with the emotions that have been buried in layer after layer, whatever level you're at. So I work with clients from all over the world, and it's really about how we can release the limitations at this level so we can manifest at the next level.
That's amazing. And I love how you integrate Reiki into everything. You're the only coach I've ever heard of that does that combines the trauma recovery work or the releasing the limitations along with Reiki work. And I think it's amazing. If someone is watching now and they're thinking the same thing, wow, this is incredible, I want more information, where do they find you?
They can go to my website, www.soulspacehealing.com, or they can go to the Anchor app. I also have the podcast on the Anchor app. I'm on Facebook as Soul Space Healing, Instagram, Twitter as Soul Space Healing. So it's 2 words, Soul Space and then Healing. And I also have my LinkedIn page as Bola Abimbola. So that's, so it's, I'm online. There is a next level. I have lots of free resources on my website. Great. And so if people sign up to soulspacehealing.com, they can access my free next level toolkits, which has 8 different tools, including free subliminal programming, which is an unconditional love subliminal programming audio session that reprograms your subconscious mind to begin to hold unconditional love mindset. And I also have a guided meditation on there, a free guided meditation to heal your past self. And it's really wonderful. I use the Ashtamangala Tibetan symbols in that. So it's really lovely, soothing music. So I encourage those who are ready to really connect and live in more worthiness and authenticity to try them out.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Bola.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much again, Bola, for coming along today and just sharing your amazing knowledge and just enlightening us with your, about daily living of worthiness and authenticity. I just hope the viewers are just absolutely loving this, and we will all see everybody soon in another video. But until then, thank you everybody, and take care. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.